It's 7 p.m. Wednesday, July 17th, here in Seoul.
Coming up on NEWSCENTER tonight. South Korea warns Japan's export curbs against Seoul will hurt billions of consumers and companies around the world, including those in America's Silicon Valley.
Japan says it will continue to urge South Korea to comply with its request to form an arbitration panel to look into wartime forced labor, an issue that lies at the heart of the trade friction. This comes a day ahead of a deadline for Seoul set by Tokyo.
U.S. President Trump reiterates he's in no rush and that tremendous progress has been made regarding North Korea's denuclearization. The remark follows North Korea's denouncement of South Korea-U.S. joint military drills, which it claims would put nuclear talks at risk.
And the National Assembly holds a ceremony to mark 71 years since South Korea adopted its constitution. Parliamentary Speaker Moon Hee-sang again stresses the need to revise the decades-old charter. NEWSCENTER begins now.
Good evening to our viewers in Korea and hello to others watching from around the world. Welcome to Arirang News Center. Live from Seoul, I'm Han-daeun.
And I'm Wartime. Thank you as always for joining us this evening. Our top story tonight. A South Korean government official has warned that Japan's export restrictions that targets Korea's semiconductor industry will hurt companies and consumers around the world.
Urging Japan to honor its promise at the G20 summit in Osaka, it demanded Japan to immediately retract its export curbs. We begin with our Park Hee-jun.
South Korea says Japan's recent trade sanctions will have dire consequences on firms and consumers around the world and implored Japan to call off its measures. A government official told foreign correspondents in Seoul Wednesday that the export restrictions will disrupt chip production lines and severely affect companies like Apple, Amazon, Dell, and Sony. They said its effects will be felt by billions of consumers around the globe. The official expressed disappointment regarding the measures that targeted the semiconductor industry. This especially as semiconductors take up around 25% of Korean exports, while Korean chipmakers account for 70% of the world's DRAM production as well as a significant portion of NAND flash and system memory. He said Korea will have to take great efforts to produce these sanctioned chemical products and machinery domestically. And because that will unhinge the global value chain that once worked well, the official says users who rely on Korean semiconductors will also suffer immensely. The official called on Japan to honor its promise made at the G20 summit in Osaka last month that it will continue to uphold the principles of free trade. Warning that such actions violate WTO rules, he urged Tokyo to withdraw them immediately. He also reiterated that the South Korean government hopes to resolve the issue constructively through dialogue and creative solutions. It believes them to be the best way to maintain solidarity between Korea, the U.S., and Japan, especially amid the numerous challenges in the region. Stressing that science and technology are not a tool for war, the official emphasized the need to settle the conflict regarding export control and the Supreme Court ruling for future-oriented relations. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
South Korea has once again called on Japan to withdraw its recent decision to restrict exports to Korea. Seoul's finance minister says those measures will not only weaken global economy, but also erode international trust in Japan itself. Our Kim Da-mi tells us more.
South Korea has once again called on Japan to retract its latest export restrictions and urged Tokyo to engage in a dialogue over the issue. During an economic meeting on Wednesday morning, South Korea's finance minister Hong Nam-ki said Tokyo's export curbs could undermine the foundation of the two sides' economic cooperation.
We are concerned that the Japanese move could further weaken a global value chain beyond the two countries, which in turn could damage global economic growth.
The minister also expressed concerns over Japan's unfair export restrictions targeting a specific country and underscored South Korea-Japan's long economic ties. Hong then said Japan's latest move could hurt its level of trust in the eyes of the international community. Calling Japan the biggest beneficiary of the World Trade Organization, Hong referred to the G20 Osaka leaders' declaration back in June that called for a free, fair, non-discriminatory, and stable trade environment. Meanwhile, the Trade Ministry also said that it sent a letter to its Japanese counterpart calling for a dialogue between the Director Generals on the export curbs. The ministry noted that Seoul is ready for talks with Tokyo if Japan is ready to present clear reasons for removing Korea from its white list of countries that receive preferential trade treatment. It further emphasized that South Korea's export controls are actually stricter than that of Japan's in response to Tokyo's allegations that Seoul had lax measures in regards to the transfer of arms-related material. Meanwhile, the Seoul government said it will secure an extra budget to support industries related to parts and materials in the second half of the year. Seoul is also expected to announce its plans to boost industrial competitiveness and reduce its heavy reliance on Japan in the coming weeks. 김다미, Arirang News.
Japan has made an official response to South Korea's non-compliance to Tokyo's request to form a third-party arbitration regarding wartime forced labor. It said it'll continue to urge South Korea to accept the request while also warning stronger measures if Seoul refuses to form an arbitration at last. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more on the details of what we can expect ahead.
Japan reiterated its stance and strongly requests South Korea to refer the wartime forced labor dispute to a third-party arbitration. Japan's Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Yasutoshi Nishimura said in a briefing on Wednesday that Seoul has a responsibility to answer to Tokyo's demand for arbitration, according to a 1965 bilateral agreement, which he says stipulates steps regarding how to settle compensation issues towards victims concerning Tokyo's colonial past over Korea. Nishimura said Tokyo is gravely aware of Seoul's move to expedite and liquidate Japanese companies operating in South Korea following their defeat in local courts, and said it'll put all options on the table to request for arbitration when the expedition process is put into action. A local expert told Arirang News that Tokyo is not expected to immediately retaliate against Seoul, even if it refuses to respond by Thursday to Tokyo's demands to refer the dispute to a third-party arbitration. What's more, Tokyo would wait at least until Seoul responds with measures, such as carrying on with the expedition process as compensation for the victims of Japan's wartime forced labor.
Tokyo is likely to take a wait-and-see approach even after the Thursday deadline. It knows there are many discussions right now in Seoul on various alternatives to tackle the issue. So rather than going straight to the International Court of Justice, which could worsen the situation, it'll likely try to make diplomatic efforts to resolve the matter.
Speculations were raised that the South Korean government may come up with other measures on compensating victims that have not raised the issue in local courts. But a Blue House official shot that possibility down Tuesday, saying it won't consider measures that the victims didn't consent to. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korean companies are reportedly on the hunt for alternate sources of high-tech materials that have been targeted by Japan's export curbs. Our Seo Eun-kyung has this report.
According to reports, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix are searching for alternative sources of high-tech materials, including efforts to localize their production in response to Japan's export curb. The latest reports from the foreign press lend credence to speculation that Korean firms are looking into ways to reduce their dependence on Japan. Japanese financial newspaper Nikkei reported on Tuesday that Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix began conducting quality tests for etching gas, which does not originate from Japan. It said the Korean IT giants could produce semiconductors of the same quality as the ones using Japanese-made etching gas in about 2 to 3 months' time. Another Japanese financial newspaper, Nihon Keizai, also released a similar report while speculating that the supplier of the etching gas in question could be from China, Taiwan, or Korea. Meanwhile, China's Shanghai Securities News reported on Tuesday that a Chinese chemical company, Binhua Group, has signed an agreement with Korean chipmakers to supply etching gas. Tokyo's export ban includes fluorinated polyamides, photoresist, and etching gas, which are used for the production of chips and displays for smartphones and TVs. Korea is relatively less dependent on Japan for the supply of etching gas compared to the fluorinated polyamides and photoresist, of which 90% are imported. According to the Korea International Trade Association, China accounted for 46.3% of South Korea's etching gas imports from January to May this year, followed by Japan at 43.9%. This suggests that Beijing could satiate Korea's demand for etching gas even if supply from Japan was disrupted. 서은경, Arirang News.
Washington's top official on East Asia policy, David Stilwell, says the U.S. will do what it can to help South Korea and Japan quickly resolve their trade dispute. He was speaking to reporters earlier today after meeting with South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa. Take a listen.
The truth is, no significant issue in this region can be resolved without cooperation between our two allies, Korea and Japan. So fundamentally, the ROK and Japan must resolve these sensitive matters, and we hope that resolution happens soon. The United States, as a close friend and an ally to both, will do what it can to support their efforts to resolve them.
On the same day, Stilwell also met with his South Korean counterpart Yoon Sun-gu, Seoul's Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Yeon-jong and the top nuclear envoy Lee Do-hun. Other agenda items included strengthening bilateral ties. Research by a U.S. think tank shows South Korea's level of trade control on strategic assets is higher than that of Japan. The U.S. Institute for Science and International Security placed South Korea in 17th and Japan in 36th place. The ranking is determined by criteria including international commitments to prevent strategic commodity trafficking. Compared to the think tank's report in 2017, South Korea has gone up 15 notches and Japan has gone down by 7. The latest report was published in May, where North Korea came in at last place. North Korea threatened yesterday that if South Korea and the US go ahead with their joint military drills, then the nuclear talks might be called off. Soon after that, though, he didn't mention the statement. President Trump reiterated that he's in no rush. South Korea, though, says the talks need to resume as soon as possible. Oh Jung-hee reports.
Pyongyang is warning that the Seoul-Washington joint military drills will affect the working-level talks between it and the U.S., but President Trump highlighted again he's in no rush. Speaking in a cabinet meeting in Washington on Tuesday, Trump said he doesn't feel pressure to reach a quick denuclearization deal.
The relationship is very good. I think we've made tremendous progress on North Korea. And again, time is not of the essence, but I think good things will ultimately happen.
Seoul's Unification Ministry on Wednesday said it'll keep monitoring the movements from the north, but it stressed that what's most important is to quickly restart dialogue between Pyongyang and Washington.
The government expects working-level talks to be held soon, just as the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. agreed at Panmunjom, and it expects that those talks will lead to some fruitful outcomes.
On Tuesday, North Korea's foreign ministry denounced the U.S. for scheduling joint military exercises with South Korea and warned they could put the denuclearization talks at risk. Pyongyang warned that it'll determine whether to hold those talks after seeing what the U.S. does with the drills. The North has long criticized the drills as a rehearsal for war. North Korea has not responded to a U.S. proposal to hold a working-level meeting this week. Neither has the North's warning been directly acknowledged by the U.S. or South Korea, who are showing rather that their sole focus for now is to keep moving towards a new round of talks. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the nominee to become the next U.S. Secretary of Defense has said joint South Korea-U.S. military drills are, quote, essential to dealing with potential threats from North Korea. Mark Esper's remark on Tuesday came a day after North Korea warned it will not engage in nuclear talks if the scheduled drills take place. Kan Young-woo reports.
President Trump's nominee for U.S. Defense Secretary has made it clear that joint military exercises with South Korean troops won't come to an end anytime soon. In a written answer before his Senate Armed Services Committee confirmation hearing on Tuesday, Mark Esper said joint military drills are essential to maintain the readiness of U.S. forces Korea to cope with North Korea's potential threats. Responding to a question that asked about the value of the joint drills, the nominee added the combined exercises ensure that both countries' troops can respond together. Esper also said in case of a contingency, he will avoid unintended casualties while taking out North Korea's weapons of mass destruction by working with related agencies. He added U.S. troops on the Korean peninsula are improving their ability to reduce threats from North Korea's WMDs and missiles. Though Esper did not specifically mention a country, he said he's going to pressure U.S. allies to contribute more fairly to combined security. Mentioning Iran, North Korea, and terrorist groups around the world, Esper said America's military must be prepared to respond to regional threats. He added the enemies of Washington must see diplomacy as their best option because war with the U.S. will force them to bear enormous costs. The Senate Armed Services Committee is expected to make a recommendation to the full Senate for a vote on whether to confirm Esper as Trump's next defense secretary. Kanyung, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea's National Assembly held a ceremony today to mark the 71st Constitution Day. Speaker Moon Hee-sang stressed the importance of public unity and the need to revise the country's constitution to change the presidential system. Kim Min-ji reports.
National Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang says amending the constitution is an imperative task, calling on political parties to show more determination. Speaking at an event marking the 71st anniversary of Constitution Day on Wednesday, Moon stressed that less than a year remains until the 20th National Assembly comes to an end.
At this point, we've missed a golden time to amend the Constitution. If there is no determination from political leaders, we may lose momentum. I ask on the leaders to make an important decision. Constitutional amendment is the task we have at hand.
On July 17, 1948, Korea enacted the Constitution, laying the groundwork for the country's democracy. It was last revised in 1987 after decades of authoritarian rule. That's when the country adopted a direct presidential election system and introduced the current single 5-year presidential term. But there has been mounting criticism that it vested too much executive power in the hands of the president. There were plans to amend the constitution last year, but they collapsed as political parties couldn't reach a compromise. Moon called on rival parties to work together, saying the National Assembly has made no progress on constitutional revision nor reform-related bills due to habitual standoffs.
The politics of today is heading toward tension and strife. Public trust in the National Assembly has dropped and their patience has also reached a limit. Even lawmakers are now calling for the need to adopt the recall system to penalize those that don't work to show that women business talks to revise the constitution is a must.
Noting that this year marks the 100th anniversary of the establishment of Korea's provisional government, Moon stressed that the country needs a paradigm shift that can last the next 100 years.
The speaker called for the resumption of talks and compromises in the political arena to regain public trust and to help establish peace on the Korean peninsula and support the economy amid growing uncertainties. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The Korean government has given official approval to apps used to hail rides. These apps have been popping up left and right, but they faced fierce opposition from taxi drivers. The plan announced today looks like a compromise. Our Oh Soo-young has this report.
South Korea has given the green light for mobility platforms to operate legally as ride-hailing businesses. The Transport Ministry on Wednesday announced the plan to legalize car-sharing mobility firms as a form of taxi business if their drivers acquire taxi licenses and the firms contribute a slice of their profits for societal purposes. The ministry also said it will promote the growth of new taxi franchises such as Waygo and taxi hailing services like Kakao T. Up until now, firms like carpool platform Tada have operated using loopholes in the transport law, which banned non-taxi drivers from earning profits except for those with 11 or more passengers. With the rapid growth of such ride-hailing services and the traditional taxi industry's fierce opposition to them, the government has been seeking ways to reach a compromise. The government says its new plan aims to nurture the growth of diverse players and services in the taxi industry, all while protecting traditional businesses.
The government has continued discussions with platform firms, during which we again confirmed that any party should be able to compete fairly within the legal framework. The benefits must also be enjoyed by the public.
The platform company's contributions will be used to support the traditional taxi industry and boost welfare for its drivers, such as pension payouts. Taxi drivers have long feared new players in the market would lead to job cuts and reduced earnings. To further stabilise their income, the government says it plans to implement a monthly salary system for taxi drivers from 2021. It will also encourage younger people to enter the industry by easing licence qualifications and boosting pension payouts for drivers over the age of 75 who decide to retire. 오수영 Arirang News.
The European Commission has elected its next president, and for the first time in history, it's a woman. Our Hongyu reports.
Germany's outgoing defense minister Ursula von der Leyen was elected president of the EU Commission by the European Parliament on Tuesday evening, but it was a very tight vote. Out of the 374 votes she needed from a total of 751 parliament members, 383 votes were cast in her favor, 327 against, with 22 abstaining. In her new role, she is expected to provide political guidance when drafting EU laws, managing the EU's budget, and enforcing EU rules.
The trust you placed in me is confidence you placed in Europe. Your confidence in a united and a strong Europe, from east to west, from south to north. Your confidence in a Europe that is ready to fight for the future, rather than fighting against each other. Your confidence in a Europe that will take the big challenges of our times together.
Beginning her 5-year term in November, when she takes over from Jean-Claude Juncker, she will have many challenges on her plate, such as climate change, migration, and internal division. But von der Leyen's narrow margin of victory could be foreshadowing hurdles ahead in passing legislation through the European Parliament. Hongyu, Arirang News.
We're nearly a week into the World Aquatic Championships in Korea's southwestern city of Gwangju. The city's under the global spotlight, and with so many people in town for it, there's a big variety of cultural events to enjoy on the sidelines. Our Lee Min-sun in Gwangju with more.
At Gwangju's Nambu University, the main venue for the 2019 World Aquatics Championships, promotional booths have been set up with various cultural programs for visitors to experience and learn more about Korean culture. Gwangju and its surrounding Jeolla provinces are well known in South Korea for their local delicacies. For international visitors to get a unique taste of Korea, a local traditional food organization has prepared an exhibition displaying ceremonial table settings for various rites of passage.
Since Gwangju is hosting an international sporting event, we prepare traditional ritual tables for everything from birth celebrations to wedding ceremonies, so we can promote Korea's food culture. Locally prepared food and 7 dishes that represent Gwangju were selected. I hope visitors taste all of them.
The booths are not for eyes only. Visitors can also enjoy some hands-on experiences. Athletes here for the championships can get a unique glimpse of Korean culture, scoop up some souvenirs, and more importantly, take home some unforgettable memories.
We are from Germany and we are water divers. We had a chance to look around and maybe have a view of the culture and what it's different to Germany, to our home country. And it's very interesting to have a look to the other culture you have here.
Between the competitions, we have a little bit time to go out in front of the pool and can see a lot of things, what they do here. And we got some gifts from Korea, and I really like it to go around next to the pool.
Visitors can also chill at an outdoor beer festival and enjoy Korean street food from food trucks at a nearby convention center. The beer festival will run throughout this weekend and for another week in August. Dance and music performances are also lined up at the Athletes Village and at other main venues during the weekends. Local artists have also put together an art exhibition to celebrate the 2019 World Aquatics Championships being held in their part of the world. An exhibition called Dive Into You displays around 40 paintings and art pieces by 13 emerging artists from the area to celebrate the international event. Young artists channel their imagination and artistic flair to give international visitors a clearer idea about what Gwangju and its people are all about. This art exhibition will run until July 28th at Eunam Museum of Art and is open to all visitors free of charge. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News, Gwangju.
Duty-free sales in Korea hit an all-time high in the first half of the year. According to the Korea Duty-Free Shops Association, sales reached just under $10 billion. The sales growth is being attributed to the opening of new duty-free stores in central Seoul and at Incheon International Airport. Local fashion brands are also becoming more popular among Chinese shoppers, adding to the duty-free revenues. K-pop sensation BTS made the list of the 25 most influential people on the internet by Time magazine for the third straight year. The magazine said the boy band has become a household name with 3 Billboard #1 albums and millions of YouTube views. Others on the list included US President Donald Trump, pop star Ariana Grande, and the royal couple Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle. The spacesuit worn by Neil Armstrong during his historic mission to the moon is on display for the first time in 13 years to mark the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 launch. The late astronaut's son was at the Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum in Washington on Tuesday to unveil the suit along with US Vice President Mike Pence. The spacesuit was displayed for about 30 years before it was removed in 2006 to undergo restoration. Seoul's popular Hangang Mongdang Summer Festival will return on Friday on the banks of the Han River. There'll be more than 70 programs and events over the next month. They include camping, water sports, movie screenings, and a night market. Most of the events are free, but check the relevant website for more information. That has been your 3-minute news flash. It's now time to take a look at some of Arirang's digital media content.
And today we have another episode of Koreator, where foreigners share their love for Korea.
Hi everyone, this is Julia and I'm from Romania. Today I'm going to show you chapte or glass noodles. So actually to cook Korean food, it pretty much takes a lot of time. So I have pre-sliced everything. I have bell pepper, carrot, mushroom, of course onion, spinach. Before you add the spinach, you should pre-cook it. They are called hamyeon. Another interesting ingredient is egg, but the way you have to do it is make an omelet. I'm gonna start with the onions. According to the traditional recipe, you're supposed to fry each ingredient separately and then cook them all together. But according to my mother-in-law, if you are busy, it doesn't really matter if you just add as you go. I'm gonna add the carrot as it needs a lot of cook. It looks like some country flag. Add the mushrooms and I am also doing the noodles, which are becoming quite nice. So I need to remove the water, let them stay here for a while. sesame oil, soy sauce, the egg, which I have pre-sliced. So we are gonna finally add the sesame seeds. I'm gonna use the black one as it's prettier. Alright, you guys, this is it, and this is my serving suggestion. And as any Korean meal, of course, we need to have kimchi, right? I am going to give it a try. Okay. It's really good. You can't go wrong with this, yeah. There is no failure chance, yeah. So thanks for watching, and I hope you guys to participate in the next Koreator. Bye!
Seems like we will see more rain during the second half of this week, with monsoon rain already drenching Jeju Island.
For more details, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Centre. Michelle.
Yes, the monsoon has already begun to wet Jeju and some of the southern provinces, which will expand up to the southern Gyeonggi-do and also Gangwon-do provinces after midnight. Now, this monsoon is expecting to bring up to 100 millimeters of rain in the south coast and also for Jeju area, and less amount as we move upwards. Meanwhile, the capital won't seem to be affected by the monsoon, staying under just cloudy skies tomorrow, but it will be hot and very steamy as Beijing. And most parts of the country will wake up to wet conditions, or at 23 degrees Celsius, and similar elsewhere, with Busan and Jeju starting up to 22 and 24 degrees respectively. Into the afternoon, Seoul and Chuncheon will hit up to 33 degrees Celsius, whereas the rest will have lower readings. Now, it looks like the rain will continue for some time as Typhoon Danas is making its way north from the Philippines, and it's expected to pass Taiwan and gradually approach the Korean Peninsula over the next couple of days. Now, keep in mind, as the typhoon's course changes, that'll affect the amount of the rain and where it'll fall. But as for now, we are seeing more rain from Sunday to Monday, so please stay updated with the forecast. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
News in Depth is next.